getting late in the game. They kind of had a long drive, and I'm getting a little pissed off. You're on the field for a while, and it's fourth down, and I see that center point to me, like they're sending the slide to me, and I'm like, let's go, bitch. Send it all at me. I want it all. And on that play, we had an edge pressure with one of the safeties. So my job was just it's called a heels charge. You just run through that dude's face, and you got to take the inside if you get stopped.
Oh my goodness!
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another draft breakdown for the Detroit Lions. We are on our final draft breakdown video for the Lions, a series where we take a look at each of the Lions draft picks in the 2022 draft individually. We have worked our way from the Lions' last pick in this year's draft with Chase Lucas out of Arizona State, now to the Lions' top pick in this year's draft, the second pick in this year's draft. So let's get it started.
With the second pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, come on! The Detroit Lions select Aidan Hutchinson.
Welcome everybody to a video. Glad you guys are here. We're back with another one of these draft breakdowns, wrapping up this part of the series. I would call this like the first part of the series, however, because we are going to take a look at undrafted free agents as well, but we did want to do the draft picks first. And let me just say, if for anybody out there that's watched every one of these videos in this series, please give yourself a clap. That is amazing. Shout out to you. I know these videos have been super long. Sometimes they go up, you're like, dang, that's 40 minutes. I think the Jameson Williams video is like 40 minutes long, but hey, that's just how these go. There's a lot of clips I have saved, and I just want to put them all in there because there's so many things that I want to show off with these players. I always say like, oh, I want to make this one shorter. Let me condense this a little bit. Then when I get to editing it, it turns out it's like 45 minutes, and I'm like, all right, that didn't go as planned. So that's always the plan. But hey, by how things go, this will probably be the longest one yet. I don't really know. I got a lot of clips for it. However, I'm gonna try not to show all of them because we will be here forever. However, I like that. We are taking a look at the Lions' top pick in this year's draft. This is a player out of Michigan that I definitely did not think we would end up getting, for definitely a portion there right after the Lions finished their season. They won their final game of the year, and I know the talk was, well, man, the Lions just gave the top pick in the draft. They might not get the best player in the draft. Was it worth winning that game? And I think even back then, I don't remember completely, but I think even back then the consensus was Aidan Hutchinson is the best player in this draft, and he's going to go number one overall. So then the thought was, well, Jacksonville's probably going to take him number one overall unless they surprise and go with an offensive tackle. But as we continue to get closer and closer to the draft, actually to about a day, maybe 2 days, but I think 1 day before the actual draft at the airport, I remember seeing Trayvon Walker had become the odds-on favorite to be the number one pick in the draft, and it was just like, what the heck has happened? Now, who knows? Maybe Jacksonville was all along like that. It probably was for Jacksonville. I don't know, but it probably was. It's probably was in their scouting room that, hey, this was their guy all day long. It's been that way. That's who they wanted to take with the number one pick in the draft, and the media was just kind of slowly coming around to that. That's usually how it goes down. However, they took Trayvon Walker with the one pick, and I did not expect this. However, as you continue to get closer to the draft, you kind of got that sense that, oh my goodness, Aidan Hutchinson might actually be there with the 2 pick in the draft. The Lions said they wanted an immediate impact player with their top pick in the draft. We knew that the Lions, they just cut Trey Flowers. They needed another pass rusher. They needed someone to get a quarterback, but could also stop the run. They needed a franchise potential changer. Someone that you look at this team and you say, hey, you got to worry about that guy. Someone that when you come into the week, you have to game plan for that guy. He takes the attention of your opponent on either side of the ball. And the Lions, well, I think they just selected that. With the second pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, you guys saw the clip. The Lions select Aidan Hutchinson, defensive end, edge rusher out of Michigan. My goodness, I cannot tell you how hype I was. I mean, just first off, to be in that environment was absolutely nuts. But then the fact that we also drafted Aidan Hutchinson on top of that was probably the craziest thing. Maybe the most excited I've ever been for a draft pick. I mean, seriously, that may have been the most excited I've ever been for a draft pick because, man, I had this guy up there. This was my top guy. I never changed that. He was always my top guy in this year's draft. And to just think that, for a while there, I was like, yeah, we're not getting him. We're not getting him. He's going one. There's no doubt he's going one. And then as you get close to the draft, you just start hearing, well, he actually may not go one. And you're like, oh my goodness, this guy could be there. So to think that he ended up back with the Lions, for a while there, it was still kind of like, this isn't real. He's actually not a Detroit Lion. Like, you have to be kidding me. Nope, he's a Detroit Lion, and my goodness, this player is incredible. And that goes from the film to the production to the combine score. I mean, really whatever you want to look at with this guy. Off the field, on the field, the energy, you see him in locker rooms. This dude is exactly what the Lions needed, beyond just what he brings to the game, which is something that the Lions absolutely needed. Let's talk about what element that he brings multiple elements to the Detroit Lions defense, but at the same time, he's also that culture piece that the Lions really felt like they would like to add. And to get that at number 2, to be that guy that can be the face of kind of the team. Again, where teams come in and they have to worry about Hutchinson. You know, before, who'd you think about? When you thought, man, we got to play the Lions this week. All right, we got to worry about, who am I worried about? You know, I feel like you have to go back to Sue when he was here, or maybe even Ansah, but Ansah wasn't always on the field, right? He was usually not on the field. So who was that guy that you were worried about? You know, when you face other teams, you always think about, oh, okay, well, they got this guy. You know, you think about, they got Joey Bosa. They got Nick Bosa over there in San Fran. We got to worry about that. With the Lions, there just wasn't that guy that had that name. And that's not to say he's the best player on our defense right now, but it's just kind of that guy that you just immediately think of. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's kind of the player. But at the same time, that player kind of resembles the culture of that team and what they're about. And that's what the Lions got with the 2 pick in the draft. And I was absolutely so excited about this draft pick. So we got a lot to dive into. I don't want to waste any more time, but I am so pumped about this pick. I am still kind of in shock that we still got this guy. Still don't believe it. I really don't. I mean, I just watched this film. Like, this guy's ridiculous. Why in the world did he not go at 1? Anyway, that's beyond the point. Fact is, he's a Lion, and that's all that matters, okay? So let's start with, go through the relative athletic score. Let's go to the statistics, the production that he put up at Michigan. It moves you to 2019, really the first that we see of Aidan Hutchinson. He starts to make a name for himself. And I want to make this clear. This was a good season for Aidan Hutchinson. Was it 2021? No, but it was still a very good season. And honestly, if he would have came out after 2019, right? If he just had that season in his last year, he probably would have been drafted. He didn't have the same gaudy production in terms of sacks, but he was still very productive, showed versatility, was really good against the run. And he was like, oh, wow, look here, here's what he can be against the run, and pass rush upside. Now, he was a little bit more of an interior player in 2019 as he moved around a little bit. He was still a defensive end, but he played over 100 snaps over the B gap. He played over 120 snaps over a tackle, and he played about 450 snaps outside of a tackle. So that was still a majority of his role. He did rotate a little bit in 2019 because they have a lot of talent on that defensive line, but it was kind of like, okay, here's Aidan Hutchinson, here's what he's about. And he was extremely productive. 69 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 6 passes defended, according to Pro Football Reference. He had a really good 2019. Again, the role was a little bit different, but he was still very impactful in 2019. And that leads to 2020, where he only played in 2 games, where he had 13 total tackles. He didn't record a sack or a technical tackle for loss. He did have 1 pass defended, and I know the numbers aren't great there, but of course he only played in 2 games. However, I feel like in the 2 games that you watch in 2020, my goodness, this guy was on to something. He was on to it quick. All right, 2019 was fantastic. He almost had 30 hurries in 2019, so he was fantastic, right? Like I said, he would have been drafted if he would have came out for 2019. So he's not like a one-year wonder. It's just that in 2020, he had the leg injury, so he missed a majority of the season in 2 games. But even though the stats don't necessarily say it, when you watched him on film in 2020 in those 2 games, you really saw the kind of monster that he was. I mean, it was immediate. You're like, oh, goodness, this guy's different, especially against the run. Because in 2020, he didn't play that stand-up role yet, right? They were in the Don Brown defense. He was playing more like a 4-3 defensive end before 2021 when he moved to a stand-up 2-4-5 role majority of the time. So he was still playing with his hand in the dirt. He did that up till 2021, but my goodness, he showed a lot. We're going to show some clips from that as well, and that leads you to his final season with Michigan, where, of course, he breaks out in terms of all the production. His role changes a little bit. He now is playing a stand-up role, whether that's in a 3-4, whether that's in a 2-4-5. He's now playing a stand-up role for Michigan, which changes his responsibilities. You do see more read and react principles from the interior guys, which allows him to be a little more free on the edge and just rush the quarterback, get to the backfield, get one-on-ones with tackles. So the role definitely changed it up. I think it also showed off a lot of his athleticism because you got to see him off the line, jump off the line. He feels like it helped him as well because it allowed him to see more of the field. And of course, that allows you to be a little more flexible, drop into coverage, a little bit more things like that, even though he's probably not going to do that a ton in the NFL. But his production was through the roof. According to Pro Football Reference, the guy had 16.5 tackles for loss, 62 total tackles, 14 sacks, 3 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles. He was the Heisman runner-up. He had the second most votes for the Heisman Award. I mean, we can go through a lot of awards here. All right, this was the 2021 Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, the 2021 Consensus All-American, the 2021 Ronnie Lott Trophy he was awarded, the 2021 Ted Hendricks Award as well, and the 2021 Vince Lombardi Award. And man, there are some good names when you look at the past Vince Lombardi Award winners. You're like, oh wow, there's some legitimate talent in here. All right, he was also third in the Big Ten in terms of tackles for loss, first in the Big Ten in sacks, and like we said, he was a runner-up in terms of winning the Heisman Trophy. So let's just say 2021 was a pretty good year, and it had something to do with the fact that he ended up going 2 in that draft. Now, the advanced stats say he had 51 hurries, which there really isn't many players in this draft that even come close to that. 25% pass rush win rate, which means a quarter of the time, according to PFF, he's winning his pass rush rep. At the same time, an 8% run stop win rate as well, and he earned 90-plus grades in both of those categories, and he had 3 batted passes, according to PFF. So 2021 was an absolute breakout year. His statistics were absolutely incredible, but again, his role did shift a little bit, playing pretty much exclusively in a stand-up role. And it did change his responsibilities a tad, but it allowed him really show off what he could be. And David Ojabo, of course, played across from him, and, you know, they kind of helped each other. But my goodness, the consistency for Aidan Hutchinson is incredible. Just playing in and play out, game in and game out, just like every game, he is impactful. You know, you saw some swings with Ojabo, but every game you felt Aidan Hutchinson. It was remarkable. Leads us to the offseason workouts, the combine workouts. Now, we heard all the storylines. Would he go to Detroit? Things like that. But we're not focused on that. He's a Lion now, so let's just focus on that. So you move to his relative athletic score, what he did at the combine. Now, one drill that he did not participate in was bench press. However, he did post 28 bench press reps at his pro day. Now, I mean, obviously, maybe this isn't exactly official. I guess maybe you can't touch it or something. I don't know the exact rules, but that 28 would have left his RES score the same, and it would be in the range of a Bosa who did 29 and Joey Bosa who did 24, to put into context. He absolutely destroyed the combine. I mean, it was absolutely incredible, the type of numbers that he put up, especially in specific categories. It's just mind-blowing to see the numbers that he put up. He had one of the best combine scores, according to MathBomb, who puts up, you know, these relative athletic scores, one little like calculator that kind of puts all the scores together and gives you a final grade. But according to them, he ranked 19th out of 1,413 defensive ends from 1987 to 2022. All right, so let's just say it was a pretty good combine score as a whole. Now, when you start off with his length, of course, that's something that has been talked about. It's just over 32 inches. It is on the shorter side. It's unquestionably on the shorter side, but at the same time, you know, when you really do break it down like Aaron Glenn did, like you look at a guy like Joey Bosa, he's got basically an inch on that. So you really think about it, this is the difference. And that can be a difference, but this is basically the difference between him and Joey Bosa's arm length, okay? So just keep that in mind. Comparison to a guy like Trayvon Walker, you know, especially depending on the role you're going to be asking of him, and at times maybe he can get outreached, but for the most part, I wouldn't say it's any kind of red flag or anything like that. He also has pretty big hands, but he listed at 6'6.5", 260 pounds. Of course, he probably lost some weight, dropped some weight for the combine. Look at the scores that he put up, they're incredible. 36-inch vertical, that's great. That is a great 3-foot vertical for a guy that's 260 pounds. Okay, we can rock with that. You can see the broad jump there, as well as you look at his speed scores, and these are what stand out. He had a 4.74 40-yard dash. Okay, that's too many fours in there. It throws me off. But the point is, it was a pretty good 40-yard dash time, right? It wasn't elite. It wasn't something that was like, man, he ran a 4.5, even though that's not really the most important thing with the defensive end. I mean, it can show up in terms of closing speed, even though I think his is good, and I think it represents the score there. It's not an elite 40 time, but it's a good 40 time. And I think you see when you watch film, his ability to close, run down things, it's good. It's not elite, but it's good. At the same time, he had a fantastic 10-yard split there, which is much more important, at a 1.61. Now, that's the speed, right? But what's really important is the ability to time up the snap, is the ability to get off the ball when you see the snap. That reaction is what's extremely, extremely important. And that is where he thrives in the game. But we'll get to that. Point is, though, the 10-yard split is still elite at a 9.16, and you can see a 1.61 time. On top of that, his agility grades were unmatched. I mean, let's just put it, they were unmatched. You see his shuttle score is fantastic, a 4.15, but then it's about the 3-cone drill. And this is my favorite test that he had because, as you can see, it is ridiculous, the score that he put up here. It was the 3rd fastest 3-cone time at the combine. All right, let's just start there. Who had the 2 faster 3-cone times? 2 receivers, Kevin Austin Jr. and Kelvin Austin III. All right, the little receiver out of Memphis. Those are the 2 guys that had a better 3-cone time than Aidan Hutchinson. That's it. That is how fantastic that is unreal. That's how fantastic that score is, which can really show some of that ability, drop your weight, stop and start. That's what the drill kind of is. So when you watch what a 3-cone drill, if you know what a 3-cone drill looks like, that's an unreal score. I would never expected that. We knew he was extremely agile and he's got good explosiveness, but that's a wow score. So you talk about agility, it's a wow score for him. So good explosiveness, good speed, incredible agility. And I would say all of those things show up when you watch him on film. I think if you're Aaron Glenn and the Detroit Lions, you're super excited about the potential that he showed as a run defender, specifically with his hand in the dirt in 2019, but also in 2020 and just a couple of games that he played in, because he showed so much in those games. Love the fact that he's extremely quick off the line of scrimmage, and that's jumping off the line, jumping off the ball. The closer you get him to the ball, it actually seems like he's even better getting off the line of scrimmage, but how quickly he gets off the line of scrimmage and gets to his gap defensively. Tying that with the fact that I think he shows the ability to cover a lot of ground with his first step off the line, which makes him very beneficial for his zone, blocking schemes defensively, to attack zone blocking schemes and still fill his lane. His ability to cover a lot of ground with that first step. He can vary it, but he can cover a lot of ground with that first step off the line of scrimmage, and he ties it all together with how low he explodes off the line, especially when he has his hand in the dirt. We're talking about 2020 specifically right now. Accurately shoot his hands and win instantly off the line, get himself into his gap, and then at the same time be able to finish beyond that and make the play.
On the display, Hutchinson's on the backside of this zone run. He's going to be filling up this C gap. Now, the A gap is taken away really well by the interior here, so it forces a cutback on this zone run. But just watch the entire process by Aidan Hutchinson. You'll see how he gets off the ball pretty quickly, and he's pretty low as well, accurate hands, and he's able to free up his inside arm to clog this C gap, while at the same time watch him reposition, resync himself to hold that lane. Here, Hutchinson creates a lot of penetration in the backfield. Once again, on the strong side of the formation, again, the C gap here. And he's just going to drive this offensive tackle back into the quarterback. Now, what's huge is that first step. He gets himself in front of the offensive tackle on this zone run while also keeping a low base. It allows him to drive the tackle back, and then it's up to 23 to fill in his lane so that he can make a play on the football. All right, so back in the sub package, strong side defensive end, you talk attack and react, and this is where I believe Todd Wash has to love it. So outside of left guard, inside of the left tackle, on the backside of his zone blocking scheme, you're gonna see he gets on the left guard so quickly, jumping off the line, staying low, that now he's already attacked. Now he can react and make a play in the backfield, resetting the line.
And where he ties it all together is he is a very heads-up run defender. So beyond all of those things, getting in position for the run lane, then it becomes about making the play. Super dominant here, and I love his play recognition as a run defender, how heads-up he is as a run defender to see the play developing and deciding when he needs to stack and shed, get his way into the backfield, and make a play. You put him on a tight end, there's absolutely no shot. There's no point of even doing it. His ability to utilize his push-pull, stack and shed, no shot there. And it seemed like teams, and they showed up in 2021 as well, they just didn't want to run the ball towards him. He's really good on the backside because he plays extremely under control. And this showed up, I think, even more in 2021 because of just his responsibility and how his role was, is that he's extremely under control when the ball goes away from him and making sure that he holds that outside contain, playing under control as a backside run defender. So I think as a whole, he showed you how dominant he could be in a one-gapping defensive style while also playing under control with his hand in the dirt. And I think what he showed in 2020 in just those couple of games is what should get you excited about what he can be as a run defender within this Lions defense, because his 2021 role was a little bit different. Break this down into a couple of categories: when the balls ran towards him and when the balls ran away from him. He's playing as a backside run defender, and that actually happens a lot because, as we said, teams don't want to run the ball towards him, and this showed up in 2020. It also showed up in 2021 from his stand-up role. Teams don't want to run the ball towards him. They preferred to run away from him, and this showed up in the Georgia game. It showed up in the Michigan State game. Starting off with that, his ability with the ball running away from him. As we said, again, he is very under control as a run defender, and in 2021, being more of that stand-up role, playing more of a wide alignment most of the time, it was very important that he was under control from this responsibility. A lot of times it gave him opportunities to just be one-on-one with the tackle. They had more big big bodies in the interior, being a little bit more reactive, a little bit more hold your lane, a little bit more of that versus 2020, where it was a little bit more aggressive when he was on the defensive line. Instead, this allowed him to be a little bit more stand-up, work one-on-one with an offensive tackle. So when plays went away from him, it was very important that he was under control to be aware of bootlegs, play action rollouts. Take a look at the one against Michigan State, right, where he's unblocked. You see the contain to make a play here against this play action bootleg where he's unblocked. Instead of getting, sucked in or diving into this run play, he holds his contain. He's also very good about recognizing the play. I think he has extremely good play recognition. We're going to get to this. But at the same time, as a backside run defender, being able to run down the play from behind, really squeeze the line of scrimmage and get down and make a play from behind because of some of that burst that he shows, especially when he's unblocked, but against like zone runs and things like that away from him, his ability to get behind and make a play on the run. As we said, he's dominant against tight ends. This is not even a fun matchup, whether it's ran towards him or away from him. Just stop putting tight ends on the guy. It's disrespectful because he is so dominant against these guys. It's absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, what I think shows up, and we talk about his agility, I think shows up as his balance tied with that agility to not only have the power and the strength off the line to stack and shed and stay low, and you also see the ability to reset himself, but that kind of balance and agility off the line of scrimmage, specifically when the ball is ran away from him. And you'll just see there's so many countless reps of him just completely sidestepping tight ends or offensive tackles off the line, backside of a zone run, right, where the backside offensive tackle is getting up on you quickly, completely just avoids those guys.
There are a ton of examples of plays like this, but here on this counter run, they pull the right guard and a tight end, and watch how he just uses his agility to beat this. So the tackle's going to try to get up on him quickly to protect the edge, so he takes that one jab, sidestep inside, swim over the top, make a tackle for loss. Just an incredible play. Back on the strong side here, you can see Aidan Hutchinson on the right side across from the tight end. And again, this time he looks like he's going to get crashed inside by this tight end, and they're trying to kind of squeeze him into the line of scrimmage. So he just does that signature sidestep, and he makes the play in the backfield.
He does a lot of times with his first step jab, his first step off the line, or if it's a quick step from an offensive tackle, and then countering that with fantastic balance, going over top with a swim move a lot of the time. Heck, we've even thrown a spin move there. Everybody talks about his effort and his motor, but it is a huge part of his game because he's always chasing, he's always pursuing a play. The ball is ran towards him, you see a lot of success. There's a couple of small little, just slight little knocks that I have here, but for the most part, you see a ton of success. It's very low into contact, and you're thinking, well, he's just dominant against tight ends, his ability to set the edge. He sets a very hard edge against tight ends. You also see the same thing when he's working against offensive tackles. I mean, this player has literally ran over offensive tackles when the ball is ran towards him. Literally ran over offensive tackles, setting the edge. Okay, he's very strong at the point of attack when it comes to setting the edge as a defensive end. And I remember the clip from this when they drafted him and talking about that. He's just so aggressive. How well he takes on pulling offensive linemen, pulling guards. Just the clean technique there, right? To keep his outside arm clean, utilize his inside arm to take on that pulling offensive lineman, pulling guard, pulling tight end. You see this in split zones, keeping his outside arm free, really crashing down the line of scrimmage. And it just depends on the situation, what he's going to be asked to do. So closing off that cutback lane for a running back. But you love the way that he takes on those guys with a low, strong base while also keeping his outside arm free. He can be caught at times leaving his contain. Now, this isn't like immediately off the snap when he's setting the edge. It's when the play starts to get upfield or maybe work away from him, and he starts to try to kind of pursue that initially when it's ran towards him, but then there's a cutback, and he starts to try to pursue that, and he starts to leave his contain working upfield, and then all of a sudden you get this late cutback by the running back, and he's no longer there. That showed up in the Georgia game. It showed up in the Michigan State game. It's not very often, but it is something that is notable. Also think sometimes you could say him take pretty steep run angles, specifically when the ball is ran towards him. Now, when they put him out wider, this is more in space, like against Michigan State. He could take some pretty steep run angles, and while he tries to play under control and really set that edge and make sure that he doesn't give up the edge, he can give up contained late in plays, and at the same time, he can take some pretty steep run angles, which can get him into trouble. He had the straight line speed to match up with running backs on the edge, so he needs to be very, very careful with some of the, edge contains and the angles that he sets, specifically when he's playing on space and he's further and he's in a wider alignment. He has to be very careful of that kind of angle that he takes to allow himself to really set the edge. Rare occasions where he would pop up a little bit on contact, specifically from that stand-up roll a little bit later in his roll, where he would pop up a little bit and lose some of that leverage.
You'll see this as a pass rusher too, but into contact, he likes to square himself up with the blocker. So you'll see him kind of flip his hips, square himself up. But I like here how he resets himself. He gets himself back low and then is able to make the tackle.
Sometimes he's get a little bit too steep with kind of that first step off the line of scrimmage, getting into the backfield. He can be a little bit steep and he can allow plays, you know, kind of underneath when he sees a play there that's to be made, because he has good play recognition. He can be a little bit steep with his run angles. He can sometimes leave his edge late in a play. He can leave some of that contained late in a play, and sometimes he can get caught kind of shooting a gap, trying to make a play in the backfield. But for the most part, he plays extremely under control, and he's a fantastic run defender. You just love it when the ball is ran towards him, right? Because he is so good at being a heads-up run defender, seeing the backfield, while at the same time working himself square to the line of scrimmage, you know, making sure that he has a very strong edge set. So if it's a zone run, he's out wide, working himself square to the line of scrimmage, working his outside arm free, sets up a strong base, his ability to work back into the play when the run is towards him, and not becoming linear or working upfield, and not being able to crash back inside and make a play against the run. His play recognition. We're going to get into his pass rush in a second, but I love his play recognition. And this ties all together with being a heads-up player. What you love as a pass rusher as well is that he's not a, okay, hey, I won the first rep and there we go, I got a sack, but if I don't win initially, that's probably where it's going to end. He wins with the second and third effort. Can win like that, I should say. He doesn't always win like that. He can win like that.
In this alignment in 2021, his role, he had a lot of times a one-on-one against offensive tackles, but what I like is how he immediately sets the edge on this play. Watching how the offensive line is moving, the running back, he looks like he's going to break wide for an outside run, so he makes sure that he gets outside and sets the edge. But what you love is that that's not all he does. He beats the blocker and then continues to finish.
He's the type of guy that will adjust. He's the type of guy to notice certain play tendencies. All right, so if we saw this in the Georgia game, you saw it in multiple games where a team will go to a bunch formation and they're trying to hit him with this quick wide receiver screen, and you see the adjustment to it to get out there in the flat, where sometimes he won't even rush. He'll just jump into the flat and try to get involved on that receiver screen. He has the sense for things like that. While the play is going on, he's very heads up. He doesn't get tunnel visioned. So you see it on screens that he recognized during the play. You saw this in 2020 where he picks it up and he's like, oh snap, okay, I got to get involved in this. You see it in terms of a pass rusher. When a play starts to break down, a quarterback takes off, being heads up, winning with the second and third effort. You also see him adjust to the same play. This was against Wisconsin, where the first time he crashes down the line.
So Wisconsin's going to pull their right guard over, and he's going to crash that down to open up what would be a lane for the linebacker to get outside and make a play on the run. He doesn't recognize, though, this is play action. He does a little bit late, and then he starts to get after the quarterback, but just a tad late. Linebackers already recognized it. They're already dropping into coverage. The Badgers try to come back and run the exact same thing. This time he pays zero attention to that pulling guard, attacks the quarterback immediately, and as you can see here, he forces him away from where he was trying to go with the football and just throw it away, nearly comes up with a sack. That's the adjustments on the fly.
He's set up as a run defender, so he continues to work his way into the play with a second and third effort. His play recognition is outstanding. His football intelligence, it's one of the biggest strengths to his game, is his awareness on the fly, but also pre-snap as well, where if alignment shakes up, there's only 3 offensive linemen. Hey, we need to get out here. I'll run out there. This is something that a safety does, but his seeing the entire field and his ability to play in his stand-up role allowed him to really see the entire field and recognize when, okay, hey, they're doing this. We need to get over here. We need to be here. There was constant communication between him and safeties and linebackers. Get into the pass rush side here for Aidan Hutchinson, because, of course, this is an area where he is absolutely outstanding, but it's also an area where the Lions need a lot of help. They need to get more pass rush, and they understand that. It's why they're changing some of their philosophy, but they know they have to get after the quarterback much better than they have, and this is where you're talking about a pick like this. The run defense, which I'm a big advocate for, and I'm really looking at, it's like, man, we really have to stop the run. And even Todd Wash has said that, you know, right now we're not wearing pads, but it's the run defense where we have to get a lot better. They even had the thing up, earn the right to rush the passer. So I'm big for that. I'm just like, look, I want to stop the run first before we worry about everything. But when it comes to these top picks, of course, pass rush is what's going to get looked at. How many sacks does he get? How much pressure does he get? Can he get consistent pressure? And I get there's been little knocks here and there about, well, is he this? Is he athletic enough to do that? Is he this? Aidan Hutchinson is a fantastic pass rusher that, to me, still has plenty of upside and plenty of things that can be added to his game. And because of what he is athletically and what his motor is and his relentlessness to continue to work, where it's, hey, he didn't get that initial win, but he's going to keep fighting. He's going to keep getting after you, where he's just going to keep chasing you down. And if you still hold on to the football, he might just get a sack because of that. That kind of effort and that kind of mentality that he plays with is going to allow him to be consistently productive in the NFL. But it starts at the very beginning, like we said, with run defense. It's that first step. It's the quickness off the line of scrimmage. And I honestly underestimated it. I really did. After going back and watching the film, I think I really underestimated his ability to get off the line of scrimmage. And what's very important about this is it's not just from a stand-up role. He absolutely can explode off the line of scrimmage. And as I said, close to the ball, he almost looks more explosive. He's way too quick off the line for for any sort of guard. Every time I see him match up with a guard, he's way too quick off the line of scrimmage, and it's just an issue. Whether you go from Georgia to 2020 film to 2019, it's just always an issue. With that being said, his quickness off the line is very important. His 10-yard split was great. It wasn't the best, but it was great. But you tie that athleticism with the fact that he can cover a lot of ground off the line, and he varies this. Cover as much ground as he possibly can, as much distance as he can with that first step. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It depends on what he's trying to do as a pass rusher. We'll get to that. But his quickness off the line is extremely important. It sets up so much for him as a pass rusher. It's one of the attributes that can make a pass rusher special, where it's like, I can't really teach that. And it's because it's not just about the athleticism, it's about the timing, it's about the reaction. So as soon as you see that ball move, you're going. It's how quickly can you do that. He's not the most explosive I've seen, right? Kayvon Thibodeau was outstanding. It was his best skill set. But he is very quick off the line of scrimmage, unquestionably. And when he's not quick off the line, if he does have like a rare rep where he's last off the line, it affects his pass rush. It affects the entire plan.
I think this is an example of how quickly he can get off the line of scrimmage when he just pins his ears back and go. Here they're going to try to block him with the tight end on this quick pass set. But I just want to show you how far he is off the line before anyone else even moves. Just look at him versus everybody else on that line and how quickly he can get off the line of scrimmage. That's what can make you different.
With that being said, he varies his pass rushes. He varies his pass rush plan. You will see snaps where he'll get off the line high. He'll kind of come off a little bit slower. He'll take some of those longer, wider steps. That way he can set up and change the pace of his rush so he can really turn it on, get low, and try to beat you around the edge. He changes the pace off the line.
Here Hutchinson is working against Michigan State's right tackle in this stand-up roll with the tight end help on their side. He's going to come off a little hesitation release, a little bit longer strides, and then he's going to hit the tackle with this inside jab to make him shoot his hand, sit down, and that's when he breaks contact at the wrist. You see the shoulder dip and get to the quarterback. Pass rushing role is much different in 2020, of course, with his hand in the dirt, more stunts. However, you do see here the play recognition. So again, when the tackle does not get up on you, know it's a pass. So you get the hesitation, break the contact at the wrist, and then the ability to finish. Why did I say wrist? Wrist. And I also want to show some of that shoulder dip as well, because he's not the most bendy athlete, but you do see some shoulder dip there to work the edge.
Which ties together with his pass rush plan that he always seems to have. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does not work, and we've seen it against Georgia, the play that everybody wants to show, which we'll get into. It did not work, but he does have a consistent pass rush plan with a lot of variety built into that pass rush plan. I think he is so dominant against quick pass sets. Same thing with the run defense as well, because of his ability to react, stay balanced, the agility that he has to just sidestep an offensive tackle or a tight end. But you also see it in terms of pass rushing against quick sets. They're trying to get out quickly. It allows him to set up inside counter rush moves all day long because these guys overset through that first strong jab that he takes. And if they don't, because of his quickness off the line, if he's in a pin your ears back mode, he can beat you around the edge. He was so dominant against quick sets, and I think you really saw that in the Ohio State game, how good he was in those situations. What I like is that he has a couple of go-to pass rush moves. One of those pass rush moves, and one of the ways that he consistently wins the edge, and I think he needs to add more here in terms of how he wins the edge. He's slightly limited, yes, because he doesn't have some of that elite bend around the edge, some of that elite ankle flexion where he can really just corner when he's even and close that distance and get to the quarterback and really cut off any of that space. He does lack a little bit there. The way that he consistently tries to win the edge is when he pushes an offensive tackle. He starts to push his inside foot early in the pass rush rep, right? He gives you something strong off the line of scrimmage inside. He really starts to push inside and try to force you to shoot your hands. Try to open up a little bit of possible depth. And what's great about him is because of how well he can stop and start, change his pace as a pass rusher, he can really try to push the interior early, change that with his agility where he usually punches off his inside foot, hops outside, while also tying that together with his hand usage to try to keep his, body clean and keep himself clean, keep himself free from stabs, which it's nearly impossible to try to stab him with an outside arm because his hands are they're always moving. He is a hand technician. He's always knocking hands down and creating space for himself, keeping himself clean. But that's the way that he creates that outside, is by pushing inside, then countering back outside, tying that with his hands together, that agility, that burst. But at the same time, Aaron Glenn brought this up, his ability to continue to use his hands and fight with his hands while still cornering that edge.
When they say hand technician, I look at where he breaks point of contact at the wrist and elbows consistently to create that space.
While still working the edge is what makes him really tough, because he consistently works himself clean when trying to work around the edge. And that's right now one of his go-tos to winning the edge as a pass rusher.
We'll take a look at some more clips just like this where offensive tackles try to protect the inside and then they get beat outside, but he can kind of play that game with the offensive tackle where if they're trying to protect the inside in their pass set, you can see that he'll kind of work up on them and then all of a sudden, bam, that agility, bounce outside, ready hands to keep himself clean, and then he has an edge to work with. So we can really create that space early, creating that early because he doesn't have some of that elite bend off the edge.
What you see in his game is because he lacks some of that, pure, cornering flexibility, the ankle flexion, some of that pure elite bend around the edge to consistently win, just that way, is that what you see is that he really utilizes his hips. He's very flexible, very agile, very loose in terms of the hips. His ability to just completely flip his stance is unreal. It looks fake sometimes. It looks like he's glitching when he's just going and working upfield. All of a sudden his hips become square with an offensive tackle while he's still moving down the side of a pocket and collapsing the pocket. It's unreal. And that's where he starts to utilize that bull rush, converting his speed to power, trying to force them to open up, trying to force them to get, open up with a sideline, to just kind of open up their stance a little bit.
You lean over your toes, it's a wrap. He goes right through the outside shoulder and then utilizes the push-pull as you try to sit.
He can counter that to an inside pass rush move or convert that speed into power, creates the most power for him in the lower body where he's got a lot of strength, and then he transitions that into a bull rush, and that's why consistently he gets pushed on his bull rush because he uses his body to create a lot of force consistently. He's not leaning on his arms or leaning on his upper body. He gets everything into it. This is where he was ridiculously dominant against Ohio State. He's had games where he's just gotten on teams, and it's one of the best attributes of his game, in my opinion, as a pass rusher that sets him apart from other pass rushers, is his ability to win as an inside rusher, to sell the outside fake, and that can come with one step off the line, that can come in a quick set because they're trying to quickly get out there, that can come from him winning early in a game around the outside and kind of opening you up. Then with the counter back inside, and he's so good at this. He's so agile to stop, start, kind of jump back to the inside, tie that together with his hands to swipe, keep himself clean, and then counter back inside and win. He is so good at winning with the counter pass rush move. What I like so much about his game as a whole as a pass rusher is that he's kind of like a shark. He seems to kind of smell. He kind of has that sense of blood in the water, like, okay, you can't stop this. I'm going to beat you with this over and over.
So we're just going to rattle off multiple plays here against Nebraska, but you're going to see him just basically put on a clinic. Against Nebraska's right tackle, he kept giving him the edge, and you're going to see again, because of how he utilizes his hands, also notice the shoulder dip that he has in the upper body to finish. Against the left tackle, he gives up the inside. You can see the agility to stab outside, get back inside. That's the inside counter he has, but I love how he uses his hands because he attacks at the wrist. It makes it impossible for an offensive tackle to actually get good hand placement on him. Last play, you saw him push the offensive tackle open. Watch there how he breaks contact at the elbows and transitions that into his rip through finish. He does this all the time. That's one of his go-tos, is a swipe to rip through. Here he is again, swipe, rip through, finish the play, and force the quarterback to take off. And then, love how you take on half the man in the bull rush. That way you can close that distance between the quarterback and again with the fast hands and force him to step up.
And he sets up pass rushes. This is where we talk about pass rush plan. The Ohio State game, where he's constantly beating them inside with counters, inside pass rush moves over and over and over. And then when they start to get, like, okay, hey, he keeps beating me there. Let me set a little bit for the inside. Boom, I'm going to beat you around the edge. I'm going to pin my ears back and just explode off the line.
I believe that in this stand-up role, playing these wide alignments, it did allow him to open up a lot of his counters inside, his pass rush ability inside versus 2020. What you like here is watch his eyes. You see how he puts his eyes upfield to show that he's working upfield? As soon as he does that, tackle opens up, sets up the inside agility counter pass rush move, and then you got yourself a sack. And now the tackle has to think about that next time he lines across from him. 15 pressures against Ohio State. Here you get a quick step from the tackle and you get that inside counter off the outside jab. Now he continued to beat Ohio State early in this game on the inside. This play, you see he opens up the tackle, watch his shoulders, bam, opens up the tackle, and then here he is with the bull rush, speed to power into the tackle here. Then when the tackle starts set inside, just completely runs around him. That contact at the wrist. Here you're going to get slide protection, and the right tackle is a really good time stab, and you can see that he's unable to break the contact at the elbow here. He's late with his hands, but he's able to keep some balance and still get to the quarterback. Then finally you have a quick set here by the left tackle, and again with this wide alignment, inside counters all day.
Let me just beat you around the edge. And he does that over and over until you counter to it. He gets a sense of, how can I beat you? Try to play away from him. They do quick pass sets. They roll away from him. They run the ball away from him. They try to throw him off a rhythm. He doesn't get that sense of, okay, I'm winning here. I'm just going to keep attacking this. if teams try to throw him off balance by playing away from him. That's what teams do all the time. And the teams that don't, Ohio State, even though they try to get quick pass sets, he was just ridiculous, kept winning to the inside, was converting speed to power whenever they tried to overset outside because he's beating them around the edge. He just was a step ahead of Ohio State all game long, and that's why he set so many pressures, because they just couldn't block him. They simply could not block the guy because he was just always a step ahead of what they were trying to do. One game where you saw him be a little bit less effective, and I thought he was his least efficient pass rushing game of 2021, was against Penn State. He just did not look the same. And I don't want to try to make excuses for the guy, but I do believe that a big part of it, and they have a solid tackle over there, right, who was drafted by the Packers, but I think a big part of it was the weather, was the field conditions. You definitely did not see the stop and start explosiveness that you've seen in other games, the ability to change direction. He was a little bit more limited in that game to have that threat for stop and start. A limited pass rush, you even saw with Ojabo, where they're consistently trying to push the edge, made it a lot easier on the offensive tackles, less effective with the inside pass rush, repertoire part of his game, which opens up so much of the outside because he can kind of just come back and forth with those, beat you in a multitude of ways. I think big time because of the weather, he wasn't explosive. It was all wet, wasn't getting that jump. Still impactful, still had a strip sack in the game, had a couple of sacks, but it was just less impactful from down to down in that game. And I think it was because of the field conditions. Even when we saw him win, sometimes he would slip and fall. The field conditions were messed up.
I did feel like the traction in this game led to some inconsistencies. Here, Hutchinson gets exactly what he's looking for. He gets the tackle to shoot his hands, and then he can swipe and get around the edge, but he doesn't get as much distance on this swipe and go. Maybe a little bit more ready hands, but again, you can see him slide across the ground and the water just fly up. He doesn't get much of a step. Now, this is an area I do feel like he can get a little predictable with the in, out, and then hand swipes immediately coming no matter what, but what we do like is to see that he continues to move through his pass rush rep as the tackle's feet get still.
As a pass rusher, he's, again, a very heads-up player. So if a pass rush stalls, of course, this is great recognition. But even when his pass rush doesn't necessarily stall, when he gets the sense that the ball is coming, play's coming his direction, the ability to consistently get his hands up and be a presence to knocking the football down. They talked about he almost had an interception in one of his OTAs. Makes sense, his play awareness. You see him jump on screens all the time. But also then the recognition for sensing the play is going his way, there's a pass coming towards him, to get his hands up and knock it down. He's very good at doing that as well. You even saw in the Michigan State sack how he ran and tracked down the quarterback under control. Didn't just completely sell out for the quarterback. Under control, gets his hands up, gets in the passing lane, then finishes when the quarterback can't get the ball over. You see it in terms of pass rush. If he's got a free rush off the edge, they're throwing it to his side. Get his arms up. Disrupt the quick pass that they're trying to hit on you. An area where he was super impactful, I think especially in 2020 because he had his hand in the dirt, was stunts. Very big problem, especially as a second guy. He was a very big issue on stunts because he's pretty darn agile. And his ability to just get off the line quickly, if he's the guy that's setting up the stunt, get into a center or a guard very quickly, right? Give him that power, speed to power, staying low off the line, the agility to work his way through. He's a fantastic stunt player as well. And even though you didn't see that as much as 2021, because a lot of times he was consistently working the edge, every once in a while you see him try to set up a blitz, but you saw more in 2020. You saw more in the past games when they would utilize him on stunts. One little knock here is that he is a little bit kind of clunky, where he's not the most smooth mover, right? When he moves, he's a little bit wider. He's not the most narrow, doesn't skinny up as well as some other pass rushers. He's a little bit clunky, and you'll see that when he's kind of stunning through sometimes that there's some traffic, he kind of is clunky working around it. When he comes to winning the edge consistently, I would like to see him add more ways to consistently win the edge. Right now, he wins a lot of times, like we said, with the same way. Scissors pass rush move where he's chopping the hands down and immediately transitioning that into a rip through. He is fantastic with the counter pass rush moves, always keeping his hands active, working to keep himself clean. He loves to go to the rip through pass rush move, and especially as kind of the second effort pass rush where it's, swipe and then get right into the rip through. He's fantastic there utilizing that. You would like to see maybe a couple more ways that he could try to add to win the edge beyond just the way that he does it now, where it's kind of like the inside jab, hop outside, swipe, and then at the same time while also transitioning that to the rip through. Because of some of his lack to consistently really corner the Nick Bonitos that has outstanding bend, or the Drake Jacksons, you would like to see a couple more ways that he could add where he can win sometimes. Just some other ways potentially, because he does show some definitely hip flexibility, ability to sink, and at the same time I think you see some shoulder flexibility to really dip underneath tackles. So I think that'll be part of the development that he can continue to add to his game. A lot of times when he loses pass rush reps, it's not necessarily that he lost, it's more that he just had bad timing in the offensive tackle. Sometimes they're late, and it's almost like I wrote it down, and sometimes he can get caught trying maybe to do too much. Sometimes it can be a little bit too much, where an offensive tackle, they're giving you the inside, pass rush plan was to get to the edge. So now it closes it off in the pass rush in there. There was times like against Ohio State where that happened. It was not great timing, and it kind of stalled out. It was almost like, okay, maybe you're doing a little bit too much here as a pass rusher.
It's an example of almost bad timing. Here, Ohio State's right tackle really oversets, and usually he would turn this speed into power and just run through this, but instead he tries to work the edge and it just stalls out.
But the multitude of ways that he can win is going to allow him to be consistent in the NFL. He does lack a little bit of the flexibility and, some of that elite cornering ability, but at the same time, he just wins so many ways. His ability to win with his hands, his active hands, he could add more to this, so much more he can add to this. Strong hands. At the same time, his agility is unmatched. He is so agile. His ability to change the directions. His pass rush plan where he changes pacing. He changes his speed where it's not, I'm going to keep tapping you this way. Sometimes I win, sometimes I won't. It's the sense of, okay, I'm beating you like this. I'm going to keep attacking you like this. He is just such a versatile pass rusher. And then you add the fact that he can be moved around. You can line him up on the inside. You can stand him up. You can use him for stunts. There's so much flexibility within his game where, okay, look, he's struggling to get the edge. Let's pop him inside and allow him to rush a little bit there on passing downs. There's just so much flexibility with him as a pass rusher where if he's not finding success, you're probably not putting him in a spot to be successful because there's no reason that he doesn't have success in a game at some point as a pass rusher. I feel like I would let you guys down without at least bringing up the Georgia game because this is what, how social media, how Twitter is. Oh my goodness, look, he was terrible. He wasn't impactful. He wasn't impactful in this game. It's like, man, I mean, you would say that, I guess, if you don't know what you're looking for. But if you do know what you're looking for, you know how impactful he actually was in this game. That's not to say that, wow, his best game was Georgia because he didn't win every rep against Georgia. I also think part of that was, again, not being able to find that consistency as a pass rusher where they're allowing you 5-6 plays in a row to rush the quarterback. And you're like, all right, here's how I'm winning this matchup. They didn't ever do that. They never let him get on balance. But at the same time, it also showed the impact that he had. One area where teams have had success against him is when they start to slide protection in his direction. That makes tons of sense. You start sliding protection his way, your tackle gets a little bit deeper. It makes it much tougher to win the edge, especially for him who's not maybe the best at doing that. He's not the most elite at doing that. Tie that with the fact now the guard sliding, now the center sliding. So you don't always have that inside counter. But at the same time, what that should do is allow your opposite side pass rusher, Romeo Okwara, to have a much easier opportunity to get to the quarterback because they're sliding his direction. That impact alone is huge. That's one way teams started to try to slow down his pass rush. They just couldn't do it a ton because they had David Ojabo on the other side. It's like, you slide to Hutchinson, he's going to beat you all day long. You can't do that. So team didn't do it often, but it was an area where teams would look at times to try to slow down his pass rush, especially if Ojabo was not on the field, is by trying to slide protection. Tight end help was a big thing too. Kind of force him back inside, limit what he can do as a pass rusher. Then he immediately has to get into a rip through. We saw this against Georgia. Running back helps. So even if he does win initially, he's got to deal with running back who usually he tries to just run through him. So there's a lot of help that gets in his direction. But in this Georgia game, this was probably the game, if there was any game, and there was a lot of games where teams tried to play away from him. I think Michigan State, you saw this a lot too. But this, of any game, was the most game plan to how do we take Aidan Hutchinson out of this game. 75-80% of the plays, there was no shot that he was going to be involved. It was quick swing passes away from him. It was rollouts. It was running the ball away from him. It was such quick passing sets where it was like, get the ball out of his hands. Do not let him, sit back there and try to rush the quarterback and get there with a second effort. It was so much of how do we keep the ball away from that guy and not let him make an impact over this game, as I've seen of any game I've watched Aidan Hutchinson. It was unreal. With that being said, to act like he didn't have an impact is unreal. That alone is a huge impact. To dictate a team's offense, we talk about Jameson, dictating what you're doing offensively is unreal. You saw the wide receiver screen that he recognized. He did this a ton. They got trips. Oh, snap, that might be where it's going. Let me just drop out and immediately get out there and get a tackle for loss. No one wants to talk about that. Extremely heads-up play. That's a fantastic recognition play by Aidan Hutchinson. So the example to do a play-action rollout away from him.
Splitting the tackle and guard with that first step upfield and the sidestep inside swim.
With how quickly he gets off the line of scrimmage. Then they try to slide him inside. They don't do this very often because with their defensive scheme in 2021 is much more reactive. It wasn't like it was in the past, and he's playing the stand-up role, so they rarely try to slide him inside. But in this game, you saw them slide him inside. There was a 3rd and 3 situation. They kicked him inside. He's got his hand in the dirt, and you see him just shoot the B gap immediately off the line of scrimmage. It turns into a play action. He's back there. That's the kind of explosive first step that he has. That is why he's dangerous as a one-gapping defensive line with his hand in the dirt. Continue to be good against the run, and there was rarely any run plays that went their direction. You see the one where he gets the overtop swim move, makes a play against the run here. He had a couple of pass rush sets. The one that everybody kept clipping on social media, like, look at this, it's not a top pick. Look at this guy, ran him over. Yeah, this has happened before. This isn't like the first play where Aidan Hutchinson fell on his back. It rarely happens, but it's happened. Why did it happen?
One reason I bring up trying to do much at times are for plays kind of like this. Here, Georgia did a good job of also sliding protection or showing slide protection, which made it tough for him to get the edge. Now here he gets off the ball late. Usually he's off the ball a lot quicker so he can kind of initiate how he wants to attack. This time he's off a little late, which is why you'll see the interior pass rush because they're giving you the inside. He gets off the ball late, tries to attack outside, and when he then realizes the inside is open, he tries to cut back inside, he loses his balance, and that's why he gets ran over.
To go to his pass rush plan that the offensive tackle is already set for, and at that point he has no balance. So because he got off the line, it transitions into him going into a pass rush plan that the tackle gets set for early. He's already set for it. So because of that, he loses his balance and he gets ran over. Look, I mean, I don't even know I have to bring this up, but I have to bring it up.
As we know, it's all about the setup when it is a pass rusher. Here against a right tackle and a tight end, he's going to split the two on this play. And I think you see some of that core strength to really skinny up in the upper body. And we know he has all of that. And then maybe a little bit of lack of flexion in the ankle, which is probably technique that can be cleaned up. Of course, if you're hauled up high, it's tough to get a lot of separation with that inside foot attacking the outside leg of an offensive tackle. It usually allows the defender to sink under the armpit once he lifts the offensive tackle up. Here he's going to set up the outside rush with the inside jab. Some of that lean on this play, and again, technique can be cleaned, and again, it's tough when you're getting held at the top because you beat the guy. At the same time, look at this play, outside, inside. What I think he can improve in terms of using his hands is attacking the backside of an elbow. Contact at the wrist well, but the elbow not so much. Create that space. That time he runs into the right guard, and it really limits the pass rush. Once again, this time he's going to split the left tackle right off the line of scrimmage. This is his go-to swipe rip through. Now, in this last play, I think he can get a little predictable on how he wins the edge, maybe add an extra step, maybe find another way to do it, because if they set correctly, it can be halted. No second effort wins in this game as a pass rush because of how quick they got the ball out. But on this play, the left tackle sets for the pass rush, does not shoot his hands when Hutchinson does. So maybe changing it up a little bit or just finding another way to throw something different at them when you do work the edge.
Doesn't close his eyes and just shoot the gap. He still has his head in the backfield, so he makes that contact. But when he's responsible for one gap and his hand's in the dirt, he can completely just reset the line of scrimmage. And he's making contact with the lineman behind the line where they're lining off the snap because of how quickly he gets his hand on the offensive lineman. Not seen another team take that kind of approach to how do we not let him get in this game. And then on top of that, Michigan wasn't scoring, so you couldn't put pressure back on them either. So they just were allowed to play their game. But that was the most where I saw the, hey, how do we take him out of the game? And they did it. They try to take him out of the game. But at the same time, taking him out of the game also makes him a huge part of the game because you're adjusting your offense to make sure that he's not impactful. If you can bring that type of threat to an NFL defense, you can't ask anything else of the guy. If he makes an offense completely change how they approach a game because they have him, think of Aaron Donald. I'm not calling him Aaron Donald. But when you play Aaron Donald, you're like, we always have to have multiple guys' hands on him because he's going to wreck the game otherwise. That was Aidan Hutchinson's moment of I'm going to wreck the game. Aaron Donald didn't make a lot of plays against us, but he made the one crucial play, and it was like, dang it. We threw a pick. He breaks, beats the guard, and he throw a pick. That's all he needed to do. Just as he changes your game plan, he makes the one play. Hutchinson had multiple plays in this game that were big time. Point is, they were just down by so much. It wasn't like there was one play where he could change the game. That was his moment of, look, we're doing everything we can to take you out of the game because that's how much we respect your ability. I mean, you want to talk about what kind of athlete is he? Just go watch his combine.
And specifically last year at times, he showed the ability to drop into flats, and probably not his biggest strength, but he can do it, as you see here, showing some of that agility to get into the flats.
Out watching, he didn't think he was going to be as good as he has been. He didn't think he was going to be that good when they drafted him. He said, I guess that's, tells you how well I evaluate film. Brad Holmes said he was so impressive at his pro day and his movement skills. Just watch the combine. The way that he's moving is unreal. He's got hands. Like, he's naturally catching the football. Like, he caught a lot of passes at the combine. He lacks some of that dip, some of that bend around the edge. He's a little bit clunky as a pass rusher. As a run defender, he can get a little bit, losing his contain, things like that. But my goodness, this guy is incredible. Ways his pass rush upside could be limited. With that being said, he is ready to be really good now with room to improve, things to add to his game, with incredible agility that's just unmatched. Rare to see a guy that changes direction like he does. I look at a Joey Bosa coming out in ways and see similarities here.
I just think Hutchinson can win in similar ways, and you see it, especially when they came out of college. With that being said, I feel like Joey definitely has refined his game with his shoulder uses, his eyes. It's very clean. You see that in spurts for Hutchinson, but he can make it much more consistent and get to that level.
His bursts off the line, his relentlessness, the culture fit, changes how you feel when you go face Detroit. This is the type of draft pick that ultimately could be the guy that's the face of the franchise. This is what that could be for you. And I'm not saying he'll be that right away, but I know that year one, I expect him to be impactful, get after the quarterback, and really help us against the run. Will it be perfect? No, because there's things that he needs to clean up on, and it's a different level, of course. At the same time, he's ready to go, and he has very high upside. I view him as a starter day one. I think they're going to play him like a strong side defensive end with flexibility as a pass rusher on any type of pass down and put him everywhere. You can allow him to play stand-up. You can put him over the middle. You can use him in NASCAR packages. You can play him as a weak side defensive end. If you honestly want to play him at Sam, he probably could in situations, but they won't do that. So I view him as a strong side defensive end that's kind of the anchor, allowing Romeo as Todd Washington to be, kind of your rush end, which would be your weak side defensive end in a 4-3 under defense. But there's still flexibility between those two depending on matchups and how you want to let him go crazy. So I view Aidan Hutchinson as an immediate impact player. I think he's going to start this year, and I think down the road, he's going to be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type of player, even though I don't care about those because, they're just voted on, so I don't care. Point is, he's going to be impactful, and he's going to change a lot, I think, for this Lions defense and just the way that you look at it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Aidan Hutchinson is an absolute dog. He's an A+ pick. Can't believe we got him. This is probably, I think he's the best player in this draft. Obviously, someone will probably emerge and be like, whoa, that guy was outstanding in the third round. But coming into it, I had him as my one player, so I am best player in the draft. To get the best player in the draft anywhere, you're happy about it. To get him at 2 is outstanding. We got him. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.